Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Old School MMA Review. Today we are making an unusual stop to Bayamon, Puerto Rico for UFC 8, the David vs. Goliath tournament. I am the Fight Nerd, and joining me on the opposite side of the screen is Zane Simon. Zane, ¿cómo estás?
Buenas noches, todo el mundo. Soy Zane Simon desde América. Esto es Old School MMA Review número 9. Woohoo! For our viewers at home, that was Bruce Beck's terrible intro to UFC 8.
Literally, almost word for word.
Word for word. Although he read it, Buenos noches, todo el mundo. Soy es Bruce Beck desde Puerto Rico.
Esto es UFC número 8.
That's right. That was too good. That was too good to pass up. A great moment in the early UFC promoing. They were really like every event was tailor-made to be horrible for the culture it was set in.
Yes, and this is definitely a special one because this is the first time the UFC has tread onto international soil with their first stop in Puerto Rico. For, as mentioned, UFC 8, the David vs. Goliath tournament, without the slingshot, as Jeff Blatnick would later tell us.
That's right. It's a mystery tournament.
Yes, because according to Jeff Blatnick also, everybody in this is new, because Blatnick apparently forgot about Paul Varelans ever fighting in the UFC.
Yeah, everyone was new. It was going to be a big mystery, and we would only know who the fighters were once they stepped in the octagon until they told us all about them beforehand.
Yes, one giant clusterfuck of fail.
Yeah, it was weird too because like at first I thought that meant they weren't going to do promos because they hadn't been doing those for a few shows. You know, they'd just been sort of like going straight into the fights one after the other, and then this became the most dragged out, interminable between fight process that they've ever had.
It was a bizarre show the way it was lined up, but luckily the fights were great. This is definitely one of the best shows they've done to date. Probably, arguably, one of the best, if not the best. I would even go as far as to say it's the best. We'll talk about that later. One-night tournaments the UFC had ever done.
It felt really clean from start to end in terms of who was fighting and how they got to the top and, you know, the results. It felt like the whole idea came off perfectly.
Yeah, the whole David vs. Goliath tournament as well. The whole concept behind this event was David vs. Goliath. It was going to be smaller fighters versus big fighters. A lot of these matches had weight differences of 150 pounds up to 200 pounds. So it was a big, big deal. This one to actually have bulk versus bravado, another catchphrase for this event.
That's right. Bulk, size versus skill, bulk versus bravado. Tonight, the super hype becomes the super fight.
This is the future of fighting. Let's open up the gates.
Oh, God. Seriously, we could just do like a whole show where we only cut UFC pre-fight promos.
That'd be a long, long show. It'd probably be our most viewed one ever.
Probably.
A few quick numbers before we jump into the logistics of the show. This was taking place at the Ruben Rodriguez Coliseum on February 16th, 1996. With an attendance in-house of 13,000 people. Pretty good number. Very good number, actually.
Yeah.
And an overall pay-per-view buy rate of 300,000. So, again, this is one of their biggest shows as well. And this is a big deal considering that it's essentially almost all new people, with the exception of Paul Varelans and the Superfight, which we can talk about, I guess, right now as well. But, yeah, 300,000 buy rate. Very big show for an event that, had basically almost all new guys.
Yeah, it definitely felt. I mean, it felt like they really assumed that they were going to be bringing a lot of people with them from the last show to this show, more so than any time before that. I'd say it felt like we were all as viewers supposed to be really familiar with what the product was, and apparently they were right. They brought a lot of people with them.
I think a lot of it had to do also with just the whole idea again of the David vs. Goliath tournament, where now you're really pushing that obvious weight differential because there are no weight limits still in the UFC. And to make a whole show essentially based around that concept, I think that was a big selling point to get that, as well as also the return of Ken Shamrock, who's going to be fighting Kimo in the super fight. that's going to be an interesting one to see. Kimo basically he's only made, I guess, one appearance in the octagon at this point. He's 0-1 in the UFC. But he's been basically, since his time in the UFC, he's been floating around, doing pancration tournaments, and has apparently learned a lot. He's also dropped some of the excess baggage we'll talk about later as well. That's a nice way of saying it. But yeah, I mean, apparently Ken Shamrock Kimo, big selling point. There's a lot that's happened in this event that leads up to future stuff. It's a big show, and I guess we should just jump right into some of the other fun stuff that kicked off the show, because there was so much just craziness kicking off the show as well.
Yeah. A couple of big things I noticed early on was that they first of all were really in their intro promo really leaning on the Street Fighter aspect of it a lot now. Like they'd already sort of climbed past this sort of like martial arts, like skilled martial artists idea into like you're gonna see like the best street fighters in the cage facing off. So, I mean, like it was where the skill of a martial artist meets the brutality of a street fighter was their whole like intro promo.
Which is actually kind of funny considering that these are probably some of the best fights they had, even with the quote-unquote street fighters. Like some of their street fighters actually had pretty good skills.
Yeah. I mean, they really were drawing better and better talent and guys who had been floating around in combat sports at, different levels and in different disciplines rather than floating around the martial arts tournament world, which can be called combat sports, but I don't know, that's a whole different thing. But, yeah, and I mean, and then they also had a couple of things, like they were trying to really, like, without Royce Gracie, obviously they were really pushing Ken Shamrock as their new golden child now. He was the guy that was supposed to bring the UFC, or to keep the UFC train moving and bring in all the viewers and be their star for the next decade or however long they could ride him. And they also totally kind of glossed over Kimo having lost to Royce Gracie. Did you notice that? That they were really like trying to push that, like he'd beat Royce in that fight?
Yeah, I mean, they basically mentioned Kimo was 0-1, but they tried their best not to mention Royce too much. I think they did just mention it just to kind of say, he lost early on against one of the top guys, but now he's come a long way since then. And
well, they did that later, but early on, what they just said is that, and Kimo, who had his classic fight against Royce Gracie, and they showed Royce Gracie being pulled out of the octagon on the shoulders of his training partners, where he gave the UFC great one of his toughest, his worst beating yet in the octagon or something, and just like totally didn't mention that he lost that fight.
Yeah, there was no love lost between the UFC and Gracie family once they did end their relationship about UFC 5. And this is just one of the things you're going to have to see, because we're not going to see a Gracie in the UFC cage until basically Royce steps back in at UFC 60. And even then, there won't be any other Gracies for a while either. So it was not a happy ending between those two guys.
Yeah, they tried with this show to sort of keep that name in there with, their mystery fighter Joe Moreira. But, yeah. And
the incredibly overhyped, underwhelming Joe Moreira.
Yeah, the incredibly overhyped underwhelming, because he was a Gracie disciple. He was sort of like, I don't know, he's one of those kind of a Gracie disciple outcast. He trained under them for years and years, didn't get a black belt under them, and eventually got a black belt under somebody else, and then moved to the States to become a Gracie trainer and gym operator, and then found out that it was kind of a sham, and started his own school and trained his own fighters and all that.
And that's basically the story of Joe Moreira, who they were trying to push as the next Royce Gracie, but that was not to be as we were going to see. And, of course, this tournament again had 7 mystery fighters we've never seen before, but the big mystery here, Zane, is the Chupacabra, a local legend, a local monster, a boogeyman of Puerto Rico, if you will. Zane, can you fill us in more about the Chupacabra that Jeff Blatnick was so obsessed with that he spent 3 minutes explaining it at the beginning of the telecast?
Well, the Chupacabra is known for sucking the blood out of small animals, and while it is a fierce monster, it is no match for the level of fear and ferocity that we're going to be seeing in the UFC tonight. I think that the Chupacabra just doesn't quite match up to the UFC in terms of selling power.
And what a great and random analogy that Jeff Blatnick starts the show with, of all the things. And if people who are watching this have not watched UFC 8 in a while, or just haven't watched it at all, we're not making this up. Like, Jeff Blatnick spends a lot of time talking about the Chupacabra.
Yeah, that was just. I don't know if somebody was in his ear telling him, like, go Chupacabra, push Chupacabra. That's a big one. We're in Puerto Rico, push the legend that is basically floats around all the sort of north, all of the Latin American area. I don't know what that was.
I don't know. I'm just happy that we got to at least use your knowledge in cryptozoology today and that degree you got in it. So I'm glad we got to get that out of the way.
That's right. My cryptozoology degree really came in handy. I got it online, and it was supposed to be a 2-year course, but I got through it in 6 months, and it's it doesn't come in handy that much, but when it does, I'm really glad I have it.
That's right. You can catch Zane Simon on Finding Bigfoot on the Discovery Channel every Tuesday night at 10:30 p.m.
Yes. Tune in and be disappointed.
That's like the logo for our show, basically, right here.
Pretty much.
I wanted to see footage of UFC fights. Where is it? This video sucks.
Oh, well. That's right. Okay. So, apparently also in something that I don't know if they just didn't plan on this at all, but it was apparently really hot in the UFC arena.
Yeah, it was like boiling 100 degrees inside that arena.
And nobody appeared to be particularly prepared for that.
No, especially not really sweaty Jeff Blatnick, because holy crap, that man was drenched.
Yeah, it looked like he'd been rubbing himself in baby oil.
The only person that actually was handling it well, for whatever reason, was Don the Dragon Wilson, who is once again joining us in the commentary team. As opposed to Jim Brown, who I thought was going to be back, but I guess he's not. So I think Jim Brown might be actually officially gone for good. I thought he was back, but I guess I'm wrong.
Yeah, he might have an appearance or two in the stands or something, but I think we've exited the Jim Brown era.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. We'll miss Jim Brown and Jim Brown's hat, but we do have Don the Dragon Wilson still, who amazingly in 100-degree weather in a full suit is not sweating one bit.
No, he looked totally fine. He made the rest of the commentary crew look especially out of place and white for this event.
Yeah, so that is our commentary team once again, 3-man team of Bruce Beck, Jeff Blatnick, and Don the Dragon Wilson. Once again, we have 3 judges at this event since we're now in the judging era of the UFC. And we have for our judges, I have them written down here, we have Robert Young, Graciela Casillas, and Stephen Quadros. Stephen Quadros, who we're later going to see pop up a lot more in
obviously
MMA.
we'll be talking about Quadros a lot as time goes on. Yeah, and it was really weird to see him there, especially when he was announced with the wrong picture.
Yep. Wonderful UFC mistake of the early days, which were so common in their graphics, and yeah, especially when you consider who he's next to. Also, it's like you have a female boxing champion. You got Robert Young, who's one of the founders of Black Belt Magazine, and then there's Stephen Quadros, who at this point is still pretty young in his MMA career, or rather just martial arts career, I feel like. So there's a big coup for him on there.
He was a kickboxing magazine editor at the time. Wasn't that what they introduced him as?
Yes, I believe so.
Well, at least we know from, with the value of hindsight, we know that at the time he had his head on his shoulders. At least one of your 3 judges was guaranteed to be doing a pretty decent job, and in general, they didn't need to judging that much.
Not particularly, but yeah, the judges, they got it right when they did, and that was good at least of that. And there's not too many new rules for this event as well. The rules are basically still the same. The only difference now is time limits. All of the first and second round tournament fights will be 10 minutes, and the finals will be 15 minutes with 2 3-minute overtimes if needed.
Yeah, they keep trying to fix that to keep the inevitability of the incredibly boring super fight from happening, which they never. Yeah, they were never able to fix that, honestly. But tonight didn't matter, But they keep trying to add on extra time, and you notice that McCarthy, we'll see throughout the evening, was much more on point with standing fighters up and restarting them and pushing action.
Yeah, part of that was because I think mostly the field of 8 majority were strikers.
Yeah. Yeah, there was only jiu-jitsu guy was Moreira, or how would you? I have no idea.
Call him Moreira or Mori. I think Moreira is probably closest.
Moreira, yeah, but it's Brazilian, so it's probably like Moreira or Moreira.
I don't know. We're white. We'll just call him Moreira.
Moreira, yeah, whatever. Yeah, he was a striker. Herrera, which I do know that's how you pronounce that at least, was.
You got one right.
He was a wrestler. He was Tank's wrestling coach. I think we were talking about here, and I know he was a training partner of Tank, but he was definitely a wrestler. But yeah, for the most part, it was a field of strikers. They were realizing that the Marco Huases of the world were not going to bring fans.
Yeah, and even the guys who were more cross-trainers like Jerry BOHLANDER and Don Frye, they were more punching-based. Not kickboxing, just punching-based over the other fighters that were in this. Yeah. So it was a lot more predominantly strikers in this tournament, with a few grappling people here and there, just basic wrestling knowledge. But overall, I mean, they're really good fighters. I mean, the field of 8, even for a bunch of unknowns, ended up being very good for the most part, with the exception of 1 or 2 duds.
Yeah.
But I guess we should get right into those duds. In fact, I think it's time for our first fight of the night, Zayn.
Yeah, it's time for the first bout of the night, in which we get.
Actually, we should probably talk about the prelims first. I totally forgot about the prelims because we
right.
did actually mention that. There was only one prelim at this event. That was Sam Atkins versus Keith Milkey, which was a very short bout. I think it was under a minute. Not much is known about this fight other than Sam Atkins basically took advantage of his opponent wearing a gi. He just basically grabbed the gi and just pummeled the crap at him with his fists for a finish at about under a minute. So pretty easy fight for Sam Atkins. We're going to see more of him later, so we'll talk about him later on. But just one prelim fight, and it was a short one, so we can just move right on to the main card now. And
yeah, it's too bad we didn't get to see it. I kind of would have liked to see some guy in a gi get pummeled, but nah. We'll get more of that. But yeah, so bout 1, we get who else but Don the Predator Frye. It's so remarkable to see him in these early days. This is, he's fresh out of his ASU wrestling career and college wrestling coaching career, and then a non-starter of a pro boxing career. He had one fight, and they keep referring to, in turns, they keep referring to him as a pro boxer, and then being surprised that he can punch it all. Did you notice that?
I did, yeah. They're very shocked by his abilities.
Yeah, it was like, he's a former pro boxer, and then Blatnick would be like, wow, I'm really surprised he can punch.
I think the heat was getting to Blatnick. The heat and the Chupacabra threats.
The Chupacabra, yeah. I think he was probably, maybe he had a gun under the desk, just waiting, finger on the trigger.
Chupacabra's coming after me. He's going to suck my blood. He's not getting my vital fluids.
Oh, Lord. And he was fighting Thomas Ramirez and his amazing Pakua-chan abilities, which I went and did some research on, and it turns out that Pakua-chan, or like Bakua-zhang, as it's pronounced, is a Chinese martial art form of kung fu.
Or as respectfully to say, Pakua-chan.
Or Pakua-chan was what Ling Xiaoyu used in Tekken, and Ashra and Katana used in Mortal Kombat. So
real-life applications.
That it was a legit martial art when they programmed it into fighting games.
It was a legit martial art that we saw none of in this fight.
Yes, okay. Yeah. Ramirez was like 400 and something pounds.
Ramirez was 410 pounds. He was the heaviest and the oldest competitor in the UFC 8 tournament. 41 years of age. He's basically the Puerto Rico homeboy, even though he's actually from the Bronx, but close enough that they couldn't apparently find an actual guy from Puerto Rico to fight in this thing, so they got the Bronx guy over there. Good enough.
Yeah. And he said that
Don Frye's not a spring chicken. Don Frye's 30 as well here, so he's a little older to begin with this tournament, but that age didn't really make a difference.
No, Don Frye looked fresh. I mean, obviously, when it used to be, it's not so much the case anymore, but it used to be that when you got a guy after an amateur wrestling career, you'd get him pretty old because they'd gone through maybe a junior college and then a big university program and then a senior circuit afterward. Nowadays, you don't see that so much, but early on, certainly, you were getting all your wrestlers were in their early 30s, mid 30s by the time they ever made it to MMA. But Ramirez, I mean, pre-fight, he said that he was going to be surprisingly quick on his feet for his size, and quite honestly, he got out of there pretty fast.
Yeah, he totally did. No, he was very quick, very fast fighter. So fast that he blocked all of Don Frye's jabs, and he blocked that right hook to the chin, and yeah, he was out.
Yeah, it was an amazingly fast performance from Ramirez.
Yeah, he looked great. He looked great falling down.
Yeah, I honestly I can't. I mean, I can't imagine. Were they having? I guess they were having probably a lot of trouble finding people that they could get to Puerto Rico. That's the only thing I can think.
They needed someone, I guess, local-ish enough that would draw in some people. And I guess a lot of fans who might have been in that area who weren't really that familiar with the UFC are probably like, wow, this big guy's going to win. But no, not even close.
No, not even close. I can't imagine why he wasn't on the prelims over one of the other fighters. Like that seems like it would have made a lot more sense.
I think it's pretty obvious why, because he is undefeated in 200 challenges on the street.
Challenges. Would those be eating challenges?
And the way things look, I would have to say yes.
Oh, so yeah. I mean, what is there to say about this fight? We got Goings back again.
Yeah, the G-Man Rich Goings is back doing his usual shtick.
Yeah, coming out of Fox Radio in Denver at this point.
I don't know how he got himself a job, but good for him.
Yeah. And Don Frye was pretty great about soaking up the hate and playing the heel card. I was happy to see that out of our first Don Frye appearance is him waving the crowd on to boo him more.
Now let's not forget also Don Frye here is accompanied by his coach, Richard Hamilton, and Dan the Beast Severn. That was a big deal because we saw Don Frye the last event actually in Severn's corner. This time it's the other way around now. It's Severn accompanying Frye out to the octagon. Yeah,
and I love that later on in the show, Severn mentioned how much of a Tom Selleck lookalike Don Frye is. I felt that was a great point of irony. I mean, sure, Don Frye does look more like Tom Selleck than Dan Severn, but not way more.
I don't know. I always thought Dan Severn was more of like an overweight Freddie Mercury.
Okay. A Freddie Mercury on HGH.
Yeah, I could totally see that, especially with the mustache. It's undeniable, the resemblance between the two.
Yeah. Either way, it was a weird bit of fawning for a very fawning moment of Dan Severn to talk about how he felt that Don Frye could really go into acting and be a stunt double for Tom Selleck there. But yeah, okay, this fight, what is there to say about this fight?
Basically, it's not much to say. It's a very short fight. It's just a bunch of jabs, and then it's a hook, and that's it.
Yeah, that was it. There was more fury in the cage than the calm, taciturn Puerto Rican waters. That was a direct UFC promo quote about Puerto Rico there.
Yeah, I don't know what to say. It was just a very impressive Don Frye performance. The fight was 8 seconds long. What can you say about a fight that lasts 8 seconds?
Yeah, it did start right. That bout was the start. I would say this is the official start of the debate between the UFC and boxing. Did you notice that?
About how a boxer can do?
Don Wilson post-fight said that was he went on the record right there to say the UFC is better than boxing.
And so it begins with Don the Dragon Wilson firing the first shots.
That's right.
That's why he is the Night Hunter.
Oh man, I did notice. Did you notice that one of those ring girls was especially vampiric?
Oh yeah, that thing. I don't know what that thing was. I don't want to know if I don't know if I want to call it a woman or not, because that was a frightening creature, whatever it was.
She looked like a night creature, definitely. Her sort of body armor almost. It was like an 80s post-apocalyptic movie body armor.
Maybe that's why Jeff Blatnick was on edge the whole night, because he was like, that's a Chupacabra in disguise.
That's right. Oh.
Yeah, but otherwise, I mean, Don Frye looked really great. Taking the southpaw stance, using his right hand to lead, just to basically to jab away, go underneath anything that Ramirez lobbed his way. Eventually catching with that big right hook, just dropped him, and that was it. It was a really good performance from Frye. He spent 8 seconds in the cage. So basically, he just got a warm up, and that was it.
Yep, that was as one-sided a beating as you see in the UFC, and there were, obviously it wasn't the only one, but it was pretty much like that Tank Abbott, John Matua fight.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much that. That's our first fight, and it was a great first fight to start the show off, and it's unfortunate that our second fight is actually the lowest point of the night.
Yeah, no kidding. You really, they had high hopes for this bout. I had high hopes for this bout. I'm a big fan of the Polar Bear, who we'll now see has abandoned the trap fighting moniker. He now fights as purely a freestyle fighter. So, and as he said, he has now become a thinker. He likes to think of himself as a thinker in the cage.
And to be fair, I think it actually did show a little bit in this fight that he was thinking better. This fight being now the second match in the tournament, which is Joe Moreira taking on Paul Varelans. Varelans, who is our only veteran in the 8-man tournament who has competed before in the UFC tournaments. It's now his third appearance, pretty much, third straight appearance.
Yeah, I think this is his third. I think he may have skipped one in there, and maybe it's his third straight. I'm not sure on that now. Maybe it was that he wasn't supposed to be at the Ultimate, but filled in. That's what I'm thinking of.
I think that's what it was, yeah. But he was there either way, so he's done a lot of UFCs now. He's learned a lot of his appearances. Meanwhile, we have now Joe Moreira, who's being hyped up like crazy as the next Royce Gracie. It was not to be, because this was one of the worst fights in the octagon. I put this so far in top 5 worst fights we've seen, maybe top 3.
Yeah, it was bad. I mean, Varelans had obviously gained. It's basically like Varelans had gained just enough extra skill and thought to unlearn how to fight. Like, he was in this very slow, methodical, plodding, following footwork game where he was just slowly chasing after Moreira, and he didn't know how to turn the corner and step the other way and move in the other direction, because before he would have just gone out and bull rushed him, pushed him into the cage, and started winging sloppy punches and elbows until he fell down. But now that he's got a little patience and training, he was so slow that he couldn't possibly catch up to Moreira, who realized pretty quickly that other than, trying to land one or two big overhand punches, he wanted nothing else to do with that fight.
Yeah, it was a shit fight between Moreira basically throwing front snap kicks just to keep him away, and Varelans doing his little flamingo leg as he plods across the mat, every now and then just lifting his leg up like a flamingo, which I think was something he clearly learned from his last fight where he got kicked in the leg so much by Huas.
Yeah, he was clearly trying to avoid that, but he also broke his foot. So
ironic in itself.
Moreira stomped on his foot at one point in the clinch, and that broke his foot. So I'm not entirely sure, too, that his lifting the leg wasn't partially just to, keep from planting too much weight on it.
Yeah, it was just a shit fight, because that really sums up the whole fight, is plotting and clinching. And, I know Don Wilson was complaining a lot about the lack of anything happening, especially lack of kicks. And I have a quote written down, too, when at one point Varelans does throw a kick, and I think it's Bruce Beck who says, what do you think of that, Don Wilson? And he goes, well, there was a leg thrown in the direction of his opponent, but I don't know if I'd want to call it a kick.
That was some of the best, most fair commentary you'll ever hear out of these early UFCs. Seriously, Don Wilson, for as often as he just kind of gets into these whole traditional martial arts tangents, I admire his willingness to totally shit all over really crappy technique.
Yeah, and this fight was crap, considering you have, a guy who's an alleged BJJ black belt against a UFC veteran. Neither man wanted to engage. Neither man wanted to seem to do much of anything. I don't know what their strategies were supposed to be because they weren't doing anything.
Yeah, well, Varelans, I think, wanted to engage rather. He just wasn't capable of it. He's just too slow. Once he realized that he needed to be a little more careful to win fights, he's too slow to actually, chase people down with footwork. But, what was it also? Oh, did you see where he threw a karate chop, though? That was
that big judo chop he threw early in the match when Murray was still trying to throw punches, and then out of nowhere, Varelans just kind of like swats him down with a judo chop in the air. It was pretty great.
That was pretty fantastic. That was early in the fight, like the first clinch, and Varelans just it was terrible.
I wish he actually had connected with that shot though. That would have been great if he had.
Yeah, it was. I'm not sure he didn't. I think it just sort of like glanced off his shoulder or something.
Can you imagine if he actually knocked him out with that kind of a strike, though?
That would be pretty fucking awesome.
That would be the greatest moment in the history of UFC.
It would. I'd like to see somebody do that in the modern UFC. Just knock somebody out, hit him in the neck, and like knock somebody out.
Well, we will see some karate chops later on. In another fighter in a few years from now, but for now, yeah, you'd be surprised. You'd think in this early UFC you'd see a lot more karate chops, but no, we actually really didn't ever see any karate chops until now, I think.
No, even the karate guys, most of the guys who came in as like, these great striking martial arts had no idea how to strike at all. The moment they realized that they had somebody in front of them who was actually going to start trying to punch them, they realized they had no trust in their ability to karate chop somebody at all.
Oh, karate chops. We hardly knew ye.
Yeah. It is too bad, though, because it's not like it's not still a staple. It's not like there aren't still guys in karate schools doing the form, like, punching thing. But the moment you get an actual fight, suddenly that's not something anybody does.
Has Lyoto Machida ever thrown a karate chop before?
No.
Ah, that's too bad. I feel like he should.
He definitely has more of a he boxes out of karate stance essentially.
Yeah, I want to see him throw a chop though.
Yeah, there's I feel like there's somebody else who actually does do more of a. For a while, John McDessie was doing more of a traditional karate boxing style, where he was sort of like hands down and like punching to the body kind of thing. But he's gone much more to a more studied boxing style. So.
And for that one extremely frustrated fight nerd out there that isn't me, yes, Kazushi Sakuraba throws chops. We're gonna talk about him in a few events from now. Whatever. Shut your pie hole.
Yeah, we'll get to that. We'll get to Sakuraba, Saku. But
yeah. So this fight, 10 minutes goes the time limit. It sucks ass. Varelans gets the decision win. No one cares.
No. Yep. Nobody cares even more for what happens later.
Yeah.
So
there is one big thing that happens out of this fight. One very important thing happens, which, as you'll notice if you watch after the fight is over, Varelans walks back to his corner and goes to high-five his cornerman, which he completely misses, which was pretty great on its own. But then it's even better when you realize that on the bottom left corner of the screen, Zane, did you notice who was there?
I didn't. Who?
Andy Anderson's back.
Oh, of course.
He is back.
I'm surprised that he got a visa to get to Puerto Rico.
I am very surprised he was allowed to leave the country at all, yes.
Well, I suppose most of his post UFC career was done, like I have that video of him reffing a fight in like Ukraine, so he definitely got around quite a bit early on.
Amazing. I guess all that human trafficking he does helps him get around.
Yeah. So yeah, that fight was best moved on from. Go on to bout 3, which was awesome. I forgot how much I loved this fight.
I remember this fight vaguely. I remember liking it a lot, but I remember why and how I liked it. Because match 3 here is Jerry BOHLANDER, who's a Lions Den protege, making his debut against Scott Ferrozo, the Pitbull, this giant giant fat man who, you think would do nothing. He's this big fat guy, looks like Tank Abbott, but fatter, looks less athletic theoretically. And you got Jerry Bohlander, who's like 210 versus Ferrozo, who I think was 330.
Yeah.
This ended up being an extremely competitive match that I did not expect. Even the stupidity of Ferrozo's giant orange tarp that says "Fear Me" on it across the chest.
Yes.
Quickly cast out of my mind with how good the fight ended up being. I was shocked how good it was.
I loved his tarp. The tarp poncho, that was awesome.
Yeah, more guys show tarp ponchos to their entrances in the UFC.
Ferrozo definitely had a whole pro wrestling thing he wanted to sell hard. And he was going for the full pro wrestling heel. But beyond that, I mean, he was, I don't know if he was a college. I think they said he was a college wrestler. He was a former college nose tackle too, so not an unathletic guy. I mean, obviously like a decade removed from college, but certainly athletic, and for as big and fat and ridiculous as he looked in that wrestling singlet. And Bohlander is obviously, he was one of the original Lion's Den prospects.
Yeah, and I did enjoy his little Hellboy horns on the top of his head. Did you notice those two random red spots in his forehead?
Was it for Ferrozo? Yeah.
No, on Bohlander.
For Bohlander, no, I didn't notice that.
He's got these two red marks in his forehead. I call them his Hellboy horns because they're all sanded off, but it's really weird. I don't know what they were, how they got there. We never see them again. They're just these two red dots right on his forehead. I don't know what was going on there. It looked pretty cool. I just think they're Hellboy horns. That's my opinion.
Huh. I totally missed that. Weird.
Yeah, and also something worth mentioning, too, is who was in his corner, because Bohlander, as you mentioned, is a Lions Den guy. But Ken was nowhere to be found.
No. Well, yeah. But Frank was there, and he had to be there because later on they got to wrestle on the beach in a way that was totally masculine and heterosexual, and the way the guys always wrestle on the beach.
Of course, but we'll save that story for another day. But it was Frank. Shamrock was in his corner. Funaki was in his corner.
Yeah.
Funaki's always traveling with the Lions Den guys. I think Pete Williams was there, I believe, and someone else I couldn't remember who it was. But there was a few guys. I think they had the biggest entourage out of anybody else there. But no Ken. Ken was busy, too busy getting ready for his fight that he couldn't come out and corner his own dudes.
Yeah, I think Bohlander actually went to high school, I saw, with Pete Williams, which is sort of how he got into the whole thing, or how they both got in there together. But yeah, I mean, he was one of those first sort of MMA prospects, young guy. He was only 21 and had only been doing this for a year, if that, maybe it was 6 months. They talked about he'd been in the Lions Den for 2 months as just a fitness program, and then he tried out and had been training with them, and he looked great,
Absolutely, he looked great against a very big, very tough Scott Ferrozo, who, to be fair, in the beginning, really had his way with Bohlander. I mean, he basically clinched him up. He did an amazing suplex. Again, who would expect a 330-pound fat man, the guy looks like that, to do a suplex, picture-perfect suplex out of nowhere? That was impressive.
The first one was a bit sloppy, but then he just turned and he hit that second one, and that was just awesome.
Yeah, and then from there, I mean, Ferrozo was all over him, too. His nickname was the Pitbull, and it's clear why. Because even with that, what you would think would be a lack of stamina from the way this guy is shaped, he was just all over him the entire match, just unrelenting. Yeah. He was just nonstop, and again, that big weight difference, Bohlander's doing his best just to survive and hold on.
Yeah, I don't think he could. I was thinking, if he hadn't been wearing that singlet, he might have won, because, but I don't think he could have. I don't think any other sort of outfit he could have worn would have stayed up on him.
Nothing else could contain the Pitbull except for the orange tarp.
Yeah, the orange tarp. Maybe if he just fought in the tarp. But no, he looked fantastic. I remember watching this and being really excited to see Ferrozo fight more in the UFC. And then seeing years and years later the inglorious end that would be his fighting career. And that was a little sad.
Maybe that we'll talk about another day. We should just do a whole video on that if we can.
We should. But what I also noticed, did you see that the awesome prison jumpsuits that BOHLANDER was escorted to the octagon by. The Lion's Den, and they were all wearing bright yellow tracksuits, like top to bottom.
Oh yeah, I saw the tracksuits. Yeah, they were kind of prisony, weren't they?
They looked like a prison work team.
Well, when you hear the stories of the Lions Den, I mean, they kind of were.
Yeah, they kind of were. Oh, that was pretty awesome. So yeah, I mean, Ferrozo, after he starts out, he's 5'10", 330 pounds, they have him listed as. He comes out like a ball of fire, has this awesome start, and then he just kind of made a mistake with wanting to just clinch grapple BOHLANDER up against the cage. And BOHLANDER took advantage and started choking him out with his singlet. And it got broken up like 2 or 3 times. And finally, BOHLANDER jumped on a guillotine and actually moved away from the singlet choke. It would have been awesome if he'd actually gotten him out with when he was gripping his back and had both sides of it, but eventually...
Yeah, I really wanted to see that, actually. I really wanted to see him get choked out by his own clothing.
That was what I was that in my mind's eye, that was what I was wondering. I couldn't remember if, was it just a singlet choke? Was that really what got him out of there? But then he jumped on the guillotine and had it over pretty quick.
And it was pretty amazing because it was basically less than a minute to go in that fight as well. And had it gone the distance, I mean, BOHLANDER would have lost that fight, I believe.
Yeah, he very easily could have. He, other than the chokes, he was getting beat up.
And it was a pretty dramatic fight. I think that's why I liked it so much, was because of how dramatic it was. It's really the underdog story of the little guy who's fighting back so hard against this really ferocious, much bigger dude. I mean, it's such an easy story to get invested into. And I think that's what made it so good, because BOHLANDER didn't really get a chance to put on a display of as much as he could do. But for all things, he got the finish. He survived. He hung on. And he looked good doing it. So BOHLANDER moves on, and Ferrozo, despite the loss, he's still really great. So he's not done.
Yeah, and the way he toppled to the canvas when the choke was released, that was just so perfectly dramatic.
It was just a great dramatic fight, which is why it worked so well. It's really a forgotten gem of these old UFCs, how good this fight was.
Yeah. It's really fantastic. And
so, yeah, BOHLANDER advances.
But it was funny, too, because it showed this weird sort of, duality in the commentary that, obviously they were full of dualities and weird shit and constantly off their tit, as it were. But they kept talking about, Ferrozo's going to win because of how big he is. And the last fight was Moreira's going to win because of how skilled he is. And this very, you think, this really weird sort of split in this idea of, who's a big, skilled guy and who's just big. And it's very odd. But, yeah, after that, I mean, they kind of were burning through the first round of the tournament. They didn't do any promo setups or anything like that. It moved pretty quickly for the first series.
Despite the really shitty Moreira-Varelans fight, which went the distance, and this one also now, which went nearly the distance. So we now had 2 very long fights, but luckily we're about to get that broken up with a very, very short fight now in our 4th fight and the last fight of the opening round of the tournament, which is the UFC debut of Big Daddy Gary Goodridge taking on Paul Herrera, who we mentioned a little bit earlier. So yeah, this is an infamous fight that I think pretty much everybody knows about at this point.
Yeah.
But and mind you, we should also mention that Paul Herrera put back his modeling and acting career so he could go into the UFC. Very, very important deal.
Yeah, there's a lot of call for flat-nosed, cauliflower-eared thug models. That's got a big calling out there in the world.
And Paul Herrera is a very legitimate wrestling coach and wrestler in his own right as well. Very legitimate guy. He could have been easily one of the guys that could have gone on actually to go pretty far in the tournament.
Yeah, no, he was not
draw.
He was a great fighter. He did not look in particularly good shape for this fight. I will say that. Even at 185 pounds, he definitely looked like he was carrying around some extra weight. But he was he was a training partner of Tank Abbott at a time when that meant something. And yeah, is otherwise infamous for beating up Pat Smith in an elevator back at I think it was UFC 6.
If only there was video of that, like the Frank Mir John Jones fight, that would be amazing.
That's right. There should be. There should be video footage of that.
I mean, I do think that had Herrera taken on like someone else in the tournament, he might have actually advanced. Had he beaten Herrera, Varelans for sure. He would have, I think, beaten Varelans. Yeah, I don't think he would have beaten Don Frye. I mean, obviously Ramirez. It really, had he beaten any other guys, he would have at least made it to the next round.
Very likely. Very likely. Maybe not Ferrozo.
Yeah, but instead he got stuck with fourth degree black belt in Cook Sool Won, Gary Goodridge.
Yeah, and Gary Goodridge. I mean, it's so weird that like Gary Goodridge really like he really oversold himself in this UFC. Like you watch this event, and you're like, Gary Goodridge is going to be one of the best fighters for like the next decade. Not so much.
No, but he did look really great here, and
he looked awesome.
We should mention, I guess, a little history about Gary Goodridge as well.
Yeah.
Just because, especially about the whole Cook Sool Won thing, and
yeah.
Yeah, the whole Cook Sool Won thing was not exactly legit, as Gary writes in his autobiography. Basically, how he got into the UFC was because some friends were watching the tape, wherever he was watching it, and they basically called off the merchandise hotline. They asked how to fight in the UFC, and then the next minute they ended up talking to Art Davie himself. That's pretty much the story of how he got into the UFC, and then from there,
I'm surprised that Art Davie wasn't the merchandise hotline.
I think he probably just had his wife answering the phones for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's pretty much how he got into the UFC, and then from there he had to actually train for it. And he had a friend at the factory. I think he's working at a automobile part factory, and one of his friends there was actually practicing Cook Sool Won, and so he brought Gary over to the Cook Sool Won gym, where they were actually raising funds for someone to get into the UFC, someone else that was in the gym currently. So Goodridge said, why don't we fight, and whoever wins that fight gets to go to the UFC. And needless to say, Goodridge won that fight with just as little skill as he had. And then the agreement part of that was, they were going to train Gary for his octagon debut, and for that he would have to wear the gi with the logo of the Cook Sool Won school into the cage itself, which he did. And that's essentially how he got the whole fourth degree black belt, and how he got the gi and everything, despite really not doing any Cook Sool Won whatsoever.
Yeah, although to his credit, much more believably, they mentioned that he was a Canadian super heavyweight Golden Glove boxer. And I think that's probably much more accurate in terms of his skill, that he had some amateur boxing credentials.
The most accurate assessment of his skills were basically that he was an arm wrestler.
Yeah, that's the most
arm wrestler, very strong arm wrestler. He was actually in Over the Top with Stallone.
Yeah, he had a movie. He was in some movies, and apparently he beat 1,000 Japanese men in 2 hours arm wrestling.
Which I love, because Bruce Beck, of all the times ever, Bruce Beck doubts anyone's credentials. He doubts, and he even says it. He goes, and Gary Goodridge beat 1,000 Japanese men in 2 hours. Like, of all the things that he doubted in his time commentating in the UFC, he doubts that Gary Goodridge could beat guys in arm wrestling, like that many guys.
Yeah.
All the outrageous claims.
Yeah. And of all the bullshit stacked on Gary Goodridge's claims themselves. Like, that is the most likely and legitimate thing that he has ever to have done in his combat sports career prior to the UFC.
It boggles the mind how little respect they actually gave Goodridge at all. Like, they just didn't believe any of his credentials. Of all the people not to believe, Gary Goodridge, who knew?
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, the doubts ended very quickly in about, 10 seconds, I think?
Yeah. Herrera went for a shot right off the bat. Goodridge got his arm between his legs and grabbed his other arm and fell down in sort of a crucifix thing, and everybody's seen it. It is one of the best, most brutal moments in UFC history.
And easily one of the most iconic knockout highlights as well to this day. You can't see the UFC and not know that. In fact, to this day, I know people who are trying to ban the sport, they always use that highlight as one of the reasons why MMA is so horrible and evil. Yeah,
I mean, it broke Herrera's jaw. He was knocked out after the first elbow. It was pretty clear that he was already badly hurt, and he ate 8 or 9 more. And it was just brutal.
And side note on how he did that, again, this is out of Gary's autobiography where he explains the whole thing. The day before the tournament when they got there, they were basically watching the competition train and do their promo video shoots, which we really didn't see much of, but they filmed all their promo video shoots, and Gary had his guys out there scouting, basically to see what other people were doing, and I guess they knew they were going to fight Herrera in the first round. So they saw that Herrera was shooting a lot, and he was going to do fireman's carries and this and that. So basically, Goodridge spent the entire night awake in his hotel room with his coaches trying to figure out how to defend the fireman's carry and the single takedown and whatever. And then they basically decided on doing this crucifix thing because Gary didn't know how to sprawl. So basically, they just decided to do this crucifix. They practiced it all night, and luckily that's exactly what happened, and it worked out just very well for Gary.
Yeah, and it's ridiculous to think that could even work. Like one night of, basically he won with one night of training.
It's pretty crazy, and yeah, poor Herrera. He was just messed up after this fight. I mean, he was in the cage for a while, just basically out of it. He tried walking out on his own. Despite him walking out on his 2 feet, he still looked really out of it. And Don Wilson says, well, that kind of knockout, it causes bone damage, not brain damage. But yeah, exactly. From my understanding, I've heard Herrera was not quite the same after that knockout for quite some time. But luckily, he's still okay now. He's still around these days, still doing his wrestling thing. So he's fine, everybody. He's okay. He just will never ever be in the octagon ever again.
Yeah, a whole bunch of elbows right to your temple are gonna kind of mess you up. That's not a bone damage knockout, even if it does break your jaw along the way. But he seemed pretty pissed about that loss. I think he was definitely, I mean, not that anyone who doesn't step in the cage doesn't come in and plan on winning the whole thing, but I think his expectations were probably pretty high.
Yeah, and I mean, he really can't argue with that stoppage because I mean, he was basically almost dead. So
no, yeah. Oh, so but I also we saw post fight. We saw him come in with in the last fight with BOHLANDER, but post fight they cut to Funaki cage side and showed him there, and we're teasing him, and that kills.
Yeah, because we've already discussed it in the past with us when we play our little game of how would this guy do in the cage, and we already know, we discussed it way earlier, how would Funaki do in the UFC cage. He would have killed. He would have destroyed people.
Yeah, no question, and it's just terrible to see them actually teasing him like, oh, he might be in the UFC soon, and
he never, for whatever reason, he never made it in there. We saw other Pancrase guys, but never Funaki.
Yep, I mean, yeah. They even shipped over some people who were like under Pancrase contract for like a fight or two, but never him.
We'll never know what happened to that or why he never made it, I guess. But such a disappointment because Funaki was so damn good. And it would have been interesting to see how he did against these big Americans. Like, how do you put in a guy with like Scott Ferrozo? What would he do? What would he do against Tank Abbott? These are situations that we could have maybe seen, but we never will. And it's
really a tragedy. And we also we got the nice story about Art Davies' discovering of MMA. Did you hear that little gem?
I did not have that piece on my copy. No.
Oh, you didn't have that piece? They cut to Art Davie, the current the IFC commissioner? Was that? Yep. It was the IFC?
International Fighting Commission or something like that.
Yeah, the We Regulate Ourselves governing body.
Yep.
And they talked about Art Davie, who first saw MMA in a Bangkok nightclub when a Indian wrestler took on a Thai boxer.
So Art Davie watched Bloodsport, is what he's saying.
Basically. From his time in the Marines. That was their story of Art Davie in MMA. And after that, they kind of killed. This was the end of the first round, and they kind of killed the momentum of the show right here. There was
okay. So we're gonna get it back pretty quickly.
Well, I mean, not killed the momentum in terms of like, the fights. The fights were obviously awesome. We're getting great action, but they were really slowing things down for the pay-per-view.
Which is weird because they made things shorter. They made all the time limits generally shorter, so I thought they would maybe put more fights or something, but. Or they could have done a lot of different things to kill time. But I guess at this point in history, they didn't really know how to kill time. So we got Art Davie, but who knew?
Yeah, they just did a lot of crowd panning and a lot of basic interviews and just really a lot of filler. A lot of Bruce Beck and Jeff Blatnick chatting, which everybody needs more of that.
No, no,
No.
no.
So I don't know if you got this too, but did you get the fight announcement or the replacement announcement in your copy by Goings?
I think I did, but it was in the background. I don't remember hearing it too well.
Because he was having all kinds of trouble. So obviously now we're at the second round, and the big announcement is that Paul Varelans can't continue. He broke his foot in the first fight when Herrera stomped on it really hard, and he can't continue. So we're getting Sam Adkins, who won his alternate bout early on, and Goings wants to get out there and tell a crowd that doesn't have the best grasp of English and doesn't really care that much about the UFC as a product. They're just it's pure spectacle, very obviously for this crowd. I mean, they're holding signs up like Bruce Lee, fighting in the UFC and stuff like that. It's just a big spectacle there. And he has like 4 or 5 false starts of trying to make this announcement that Paul Varelans has been replaced. It just says like, Paul Varelans have an announcement. And finally, he just rushes through it while the crowd talks over him, and we get Sam Adkins coming in for Paul Varelans to fight Don Frye.
Sam, the experienced Atkins, who is apparently a very legit retired boxer.
Yeah, he was a training partner to some better boxers, and is so legit that he retired to do boxercise.
Yeah, I mean it's better than Dana White doing jazzercise.
Yeah, but yeah, he was a pro boxer with a decent, I don't know how good his record was, but he had a lot of fights, and he, had been a sparring partner for some other better boxers, and he'd even had a collegiate wrestling career, so all around another wrestle boxer. We're starting to get a few of these guys. Because obviously, for a lot of wrestlers, they didn't have anywhere to go for pro sports once they'd finished their wrestling. And so you got guys who'd been wrestlers who then went out and did some boxing and who were now finding the UFC and saying, awesome, I can come here and use my wrestling and my boxing and wrestle box.
So theoretically, this could have been a great stand-up striking match between the two of them, between Don Frye and Sam Atkins, but it didn't quite go that way.
No, Adkins looked like he'd skipped a lot of leg days. He had some awesome Zubas on.
Those pants were amazing. They're like tiger stripe pants. I don't know what they were, but they were great looking.
They were fantastic.
They really fit well with his very furry chest also.
Yes. He looked like a tiger. He was really top heavy, and it did not take much for Don Frye to just dump him on his ass on a single.
Yeah, I mean, Don Frye just basically, the two started the strike, the two started standing up, but Don Frye just basically slipped a jab, got underneath, and shot for a single leg takedown. Got up against the cage and started throwing hands until basically he just cut Atkins, and it was a pretty bad cut, so they had to stop the fight. And Atkins was literally pissed. He kicked the cage a few times, but otherwise, I mean, Don Frye fought a very smart fight and was able to finish him off pretty quickly.
Yeah, they kept saying that Adkins had tapped, but I didn't really see it. I didn't actually see any signs that he quit the fight. I think they just stopped it because of the cut.
Yeah, I mean, on the ground, you can kind of see him, flailing his arm almost like stiffly. It looks like he's going to tap, or he might have been tapping. Or maybe he was thinking about tapping, but he wasn't quite tapping, it looked like. I mean, it's up for debate, but it wasn't quite a tap. It could have been interpreted as a tap, but it wasn't.
It looked more like panic flailing.
Pretty much. It was just panic flailing. He didn't know what to do on the ground. He was very uncomfortable on the ground, giving his back up right away. I'm surprised Don just didn't go for a rear naked choke, but...
I think they sort of mentioned later that Don Frye didn't really know any chokes. I mean, I know that certainly if he was training with Severn that Severn had classically had zero idea about submission grappling and was very slowly learning it. So my guess would be Don Frye was probably on a pretty similar wavelength.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, either way, Frye just pretty much dominated the whole fight. Again, a very short fight. It's only 48 seconds long. So Don has not even spent a whole minute in the cage yet. He's now 2-0. Looks great. Not much more to say other than that. Don Frye is looking really good.
Yeah. Nah, he was. It's so. I mean, for as long as Don Frye stuck around and slowed down over the years, he was an awesome fighter early on.
Yeah, it was easy to see why he was going to be going places in the cage, and yeah, Don Frye looked great here, and it doesn't get any worse from here. He keeps getting better.
Yeah. So yeah, we got the Sweet Zubas, and we finally have a name for Mr. Monson.
Yeah, I caught that, and they were in between this fight now. They're trying to kill time once again because the fight went so quick. They're just panning around panning around the arena, looking at fans, and they get a shot of the Ultimate Fighting Championship logo, and Blatnick just blurts out, "Our mascot, the Ultimate Fighting Champion."
Oh, what a name, Blatnick! Way to jump on that.
So we're just gonna call him Jeff Munson still. That's really his name. Or I think they call him Ultiman later on, but for now he's the Ultimate Fighting Champion. So
that's right.
He is the man you have to beat. He is the guy that when you play Eternal Champions, he's the final boss in the game.
That's right. Or when you play what was it? I think it was was it what was the Dead Alive? I think was that the
DOA?
One? Wait, what?
Dead or Alive?
Dead or Alive, where you'd have to fight a mirror version of yourself as a final boss, or am I thinking of Soul Calibur?
The two games I don't like, so I don't care.
All right. Well, one of those games out there, you have to eventually you end up fighting a big gray blob mirror version of yourself, and that would pretty much fit for the Ultimate Fighting Champion there.
Yeah, that is Jeff Munson, a big gray blob.
With anarchy tattoos.
Lots of anarchy tattoos. That man loves him some anarchy.
Yes. So after a little more panning around and looking for hot women in the crowd, we get our sixth fight of the evening and our second semifinal semifinal, yes.
I always get confused with those things. It's the next fight.
The next fight, which is Jerry Bohlander versus Gary Goodridge. And after the last fight, how could you not be excited for this? After the last time, each bout for each of these guys, this was exciting.
Yeah, and luckily it delivered, because it actually was still very exciting to watch. And again, we still have the little tiny Bohlander taking on this much bigger guy, Gary Goodridge. So at this point, how can you not be behind Bohlander? But at the same time, how can you not be behind the guy that just delivered one of the most gruesome knockouts in UFC history to this point?
Yeah, and we finally get to see those promos that they shot beforehand, and we're saving for the semifinal, where we got to see Bohlander out on the beach training leg locks with Frank Shamrock in a way that totally didn't look greased up and kind of weird.
You gotta train. You gotta train.
You gotta train. You gotta train on the beach in a swimsuit. And Goodridge cutting an awesome promo with the knees and elbows, the best thing ever. Where he's going like this, and then throws his knees like that.
That's Cook Sulwan right there. That's Cook Sulwan skills.
That is pure Cook Sulwan. He kind of let it slip, or I think it was the commentary team that kind of let it. No, he let it. Yeah, he let it slip a bit. Although I'm now misremembering. I think it was the commentary team let it slip a little bit that maybe his Cook Sulwan belt was made up when they quoted him as saying that he has been in and out of Cook Sulwan for years. So not actually training seriously, but it's been something he's been in and out of.
Serious enough to get a 4th degree black belt.
Serious enough to get a 4th degree black belt.
Which
and we should know going into this that Gary Goodridge is going to win because, as he tells us beforehand, he has something that no other competitor has ever brought to the octagon: just superior attitude, superior mind, and superior strength.
I feel like we've heard this before from another fighter that lost.
Very likely. But I think Joe Son probably had a similar promo.
Joe Son, there's some other early on karate guy who was like that way too, who got his ass kicked probably by Hoist Gracie. I don't know.
When in doubt, Hoist Gracie.
Well, the fight was pretty good. It was back and forth fight for the most part. Well, I shouldn't say quite back and forth. It was back and forth if you just cut the highlights out of it. But most of it was just Goodridge really overpowering Bolander, almost getting him to guillotine early on, just really swarming him and bombarding him with attacks. Again, Goodridge, for a guy who doesn't really know that much, I mean, he gets pretty good side control on Bolander, and it probably doesn't help that, again, he's got this big weight advantage. But for the most part, just all over Bolander, and Bolander just kind of basically waiting for his chances. And when he gets his chances, he gets them in there. When he reversed Goodridge, that was like a big crowd moment. Like they were all like, "Oh my God, that was a great shot."
Yeah, that was a great butterfly sweep. That was really nice. I mean, it didn't last long. No, it didn't last long because Goodridge was a behemoth. But it really showed that, if nothing else, the Lion's Den, unlike a lot of these other camps, was really actively training techniques that could just be generally used in any part of the fight. Where it was like, if you're in this situation, this is what you do. If you're up against the cage with a guy, you use a guillotine. If you're on the bottom, you get butterfly guard and you sweep, and they were obviously had a whole book that they were drawing on for how to fight that guys like Goodridge and even probably to a certain extent Frye at that point didn't have.
Which is pretty good to see because again, at this point, Lions Den is the premier MMA academy or school or team, whatever you want to call them at this point. Probably in the world, arguably, because there's really no one else out there that is a full-fledged team.
Yeah. It's otherwise just kind of guys meeting in gyms and training, and fighting each other, actually. I mean, they're not even, it's not even really training. They're just kind of getting out and fighting each other in their off time.
Yeah, so meanwhile, though, back to the fight. I mean, the fight just goes, for the most part, Goodridge just on top of him. Bolander gets a reversal, which is great, but then Goodridge reverses him again, and at this point, Goodridge is just looking to finish. So he just basically stands over Bolander and starts dropping bombs on him until McCarthy stops it.
Yeah, it took only like two really solid right hands from Goodridge, and they were Bolander's head was obviously bouncing off the mat, and McCarthy stepped in, and that was it was one of those things where watching it you're like, well, that seemed a little quick, but he was definitely going out.
Yeah, it was only a matter of time. Those were very rough shots, and obviously nothing can compare to the elbows we just saw from his fight against Herrera. But those punches, with the way they were, how much power is behind, how much power is behind Goodridge, it wasn't gonna last long. It was not gonna be pretty.
Yeah. Oh, did you get that great pre-fight moment where they talked about Bolander and him, like, whether or not he had experience fighting somebody like Goodridge, and his quote was, "Ken beats me whenever he wants,"
which is basically the motto of the Lions Den at that era.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Oh, yeah, but yeah, I mean, it was a great fight, back and forth. Bolander had a couple of big moments where it looked like he could pull something off, and then Goodridge just kind of overpowered him, and like I said, really sort of like sold himself as a great future fighter. That, like he was around for a long time, and he won as much as he lost, but.
Yeah, in his early Lions Den days, they were kind of inconsistent in those times in some ways, especially towards the latter end of that batch of Lions Den fighters. But yeah, Bolander looked great. I mean, he's gonna be back. That's not a question. He will be back. He looked great. So we say goodbye for now. But Goodridge advances, and so now we have our final matches set up, which is going to be Don Frye versus Gary Goodridge. But before we get to that fight, we have some cleaning up to do with a certain Superfight title.
That's right. We get we get a super fight that is, I mean, after watching all the other super fights, it's really hard to get excited for it. Oh, and we also, prior to the super fight, I don't know, I guess maybe you didn't get all the filler I got. I got a bunch of filler, which included Don Frye, because we get Don Frye now coming out to commentate for the super fight.
Oh, you mean Dan Severn?
Or Dan Severn, not Don Frye, yeah.
Yeah, I saw Dan Severn he had a whole entrance, too, which is the best part. He got a whole entrance.
And where he got to look like he looked like a mannequin on wheels, waving to the crowd. You see that? He just kind of like sticks up his arm and.
Yeah, he is full of charisma. He is a walking embodiment of charisma and excitement.
Yeah, he's fun. He was fine in the booth for what it was worth, but he's not. It's just like. Everything about watching him move or talk speaks to a man who does not do a lot of, who's about as uncharismatic as anybody can be.
Yeah, and his contributions to the commentary team are pretty meh. I don't think there really weren't any gems coming out of him the entire time.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, we get Dan Severn coming out to announce for the super fight, and after all the other super fights I've seen, I was tepid on being excited for this one. Super fights actually have tended to be some of the worst parts of UFC events.
Yeah, pretty much. At this point, we've seen Ken Shamrock go the distance with Royce Gracie, Ken Shamrock go the distance with Oleg Taktarov, and we saw Ken beat Severn to win the title in the first place.
Yes.
And that's pretty much the highlight of the entire Superfight Championship history.
Yeah, and didn't we get also I guess was that a super fight when Oleg Taktarov fought Marco Huas? No, that was the tournament final, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was the tournament final.
All right, so we got that was a whole different horror show. But yeah, so I was having trouble being excited for this. Although I did notice too that they started out the super fight with a promo for Pancrase.
Yeah, they're really pushing the Pancrase thing because now Kimo is no longer associated with the infamous Joe Son. It's their words, not just ours.
Which was also pretty weird. I mean, that was kind of wild to hear that he was already infamous.
Yeah, 1996, he hasn't done much of anything yet. He's already infamous, and Kimo has already dropped him in favor of having his dad now manage him. And now basically, in between the time that Kimo fought in the UFC against Royce, he's basically done some Pancration tournaments in Hawaii. He's been fighting in Japan. So he's gotten a lot more experience under his belt. So this basically is going to be a new Kimo we see in the cage. So I think that's part of it, the excitement behind this match and the logic behind it is that they're hoping to push him, I think, back into the UFC, whether he won or lost, I feel like. And, this was now a much more matured Kimo because he fought back in the day and he was just pure strength and barbarism. And now, he's Kimo the Barbarian. Let's just call him that.
Yeah.
Now here he is with actual skills under his belt. He can actually do more stuff. He knows what he's doing. He's not going to make the same mistakes again. And he basically lost to the top guy in the company at the time. So there's a lot of high hopes for this guy now.
Yeah, I have a soft spot for Kimo as a fighter. I mean, he was definitely a great athlete. Never really quite a great fighter, but certainly exceeded expectations for a guy who had zero fighting experience entering his career. And
speaking of entering, also, this time around, Kimo did not enter with the cross on his back.
That's right. He shucked the cross, although he is still out spreading the word of God, as they made sure to mention.
Yeah, and one of the moments just kills the crowd. It's like a giant sign. Instead of the cross, he announced a giant sign that says, "If I'm okay and you're okay, then explain this." And then there's a bloody Jesus on a crucifix. Like, wow, way to just kill all the momentum. The crowd's like, what's this? Like, what's going on? Like, he should have just brought the cross with him, but I guess customs wouldn't let him.
I probably. Although you'd think you could find a huge cross in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, you think that shouldn't be too hard to do. How did you get that cross to, like, other events, too? When you think about it, it's like, how did you even get it in the first place over to Denver?
That's a very good question. He walked out with it in Japan, too. Didn't he?
Yeah. Do you think it's the same cross?
I don't think it's the same cross.
I think it is.
Yeah?
I think he has it shipped wherever he goes, like by UPS. Imagine the box for that thing, too. Do you think the box is like a giant rectangle, or is it actually shaped like a crucifix?
It should be shaped like a crucifix. I mean, you save space, obviously. I mean, it's not like it's fragile.
No. It's pretty clear that Kimo is basically the prototype for Wolfwood from Trigun.
Yes. Absolutely. That actually makes way too much sense to me.
Now we're making all sorts of bizarre references to take.
Oh, man. So, yes, Kimo, Wolfwood from Trigun, facing off against...
and Shamrock.
I can't think... Shamrock, The Rock.
Was he called The Rock in this one?
They're still calling him the... No, well, let's see. No, that's right. I was watching a little of UFC 9. I don't think they called him The Rock for this.
No, I think here he might have been the Destroyer. He might have been Zool also, I think. I don't know.
Zool, yes.
Shamrock is one of the forms of Gozer's Cummings.
There is no Shamrock, only Zool.
Ken Shamrock previously took the form of a giant Tor.
That's right. Many were killed.
Many a schlub and Zool roast in the depths of the Zlor that day, I can tell you.
You know that quote way too well.
I do.
So yes, we have Wormwood versus Gozer the Gozerian.
And Ken, who this time also has his own custom entrance music as well. So you can tell they were clearly pushing the crap out of Ken, giving him his own special stock music.
Yeah, he was... Oh, man, that means I got a UFC trivia question wrong. Ken Shamrock is actually the first UFC fighter to ever walk out with his own intro song.
Pretty sure it's Ken, yeah. Who would you have for it?
I had Carlos Newton.
No, yeah, it's Ken. Ken came out first.
Yeah. Because Carlos Newton was the other one. He was the because up until other than Ken, up until like UFC, God, that was like 30s, I want to say. They used the UFC stock entrance music for everyone.
Yep.
And Carlos Newton came out to Men in Black.
I can't wait till we get to that event. That's a long ways down, but well, at least on the plus side, we are probably just a few months away from getting to Carlos Newton's debut in the Octagon.
That's true. Yeah, it's amazing how quickly you start to see names that are even still fighting today.
Here and there, yeah. Like Ken, for example.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's Dan Henderson. Dan Henderson's not far off. You know?
Yeah, let's get back to the super fight, because...
anyway, super fight. So, they're once again pushing the mystery angle with Kimo because he comes from many different locations and they can't quite get a handle on where he's from.
But they do say that he is a pancreas fighter, and they also do mention that basically both these men have lost to Hoist, and Ken, according to Bruce Beck, lost to Hoist by a naked choke.
That's right. Which, for some reason it only dawned on me then that it's called a naked choke because it's not done with the gi.
I don't know why. For a rear naked choke, yeah, that's basically what it is.
I don't know why that never dawned on me, but it was only just then I was like, oh, I get it, because you're not choking them with their clothes.
It's a naked choke.
Yes.
Terrible name either way. Terribly misleading.
Yeah, terribly misleading. Anyway, so yeah, Kimo's no longer connected to the infamous Joseon, whatever. Well, I mean, I know Joseon had actually committed criminal acts at this point, but he wouldn't get caught for them for another decade.
Yeah.
And they made sure to push Ken as having never gotten defeated in a super fight. That was the big angle they were pushing on Ken.
That's right, because technically he is 1 win and 2 draws in super fight history.
Yes. Yes, what a glorious record. And the fight was, it wasn't bad.
No, I think it was actually a good performance from Ken, and for what it's worth for Kimo as well. I think Ken showed off a lot of good stuff about himself as well.
Yeah,
when the fight started, he actually connected against Kimo with a straight right hand that was really good looking.
Yeah, he came out and did. I mean, he came out with what you still see guys do today, which is you lead with your right hand and duck in for a shot behind it as the guy's guard comes up. I mean, that's still basic 101 MMA. Throw a big punch. As the guy brings his hands up, you shoot underneath. And from there on, he was on top of Kimo, and he's not really a ground and pound striker, is Ken.
No, he's most just to soften it up and look for a submission, because he is more of a submission guy, surprisingly.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be surprised by this, but for some reason it still does surprise us.
Yeah, it is a little weird to see Ken all jacked up to hell coming out and searching for leg locks. That always throws me off somehow.
Yeah, it is bizarre, and for the most part, Ken controls Kimo on the ground until he basically, he actually goes to throw a strike, but he kind of changes his mind, I guess, and at that point, Kimo manages to actually reverse the position, and he actually gets in a dominant position for a little while, but it's actually not too, it's more to his detriment, if anything else, because that furniture led towards the finish of the fight.
Yeah, Ken, from the bottom, it's pretty, at the time, it's not something you can really do anymore, but at the time, it was pretty basic that if you're grappling from the bottom, you roll for a knee bar, and that was immediately what Ken did. He was on the bottom, he rolled for a knee bar, and the commentary started yelling, ankle lock, and that was sort of a glorious post-fight moment when Ken got to correct Blatnick when he complimented him on his beautiful ankle lock.
But he probably could have had the ankle lock as well. In first, he had Kimo's leg, and he could have done whatever he damn well pleased because Kimo had no idea what to do at all.
Yeah, it was a knee bar. It was a nice knee bar. Like I say, it was a rolling knee bar, and pulled it off, and it was really a good showing. It was a good showing from Ken, who you want to see a finish out of a fight like that. You want to see something interesting and skillful. I mean, it's why it's a super fight. If you're not seeing a skill, it's sort of pointless.
And it was a knee bar that, even Oleg Tatara would have been jealous of, because it was a really great knee bar, really good submission finish for Ken. It helped solidify his standings in the UFC, and this will also now lead up to the super fight at the next event. That's why Severn was there. Severn was there to basically meet whoever wins this fight, whether it's Kimo or Ken. So we now have set up for UFC 9, Ken Shamrock versus Dan Severn 2, the rematch we're all anticipating.
Oh, God, it can only be better than the first one.
Absolutely. There's no way this fight could ever disappoint anybody.
That's right. I'm so excited right now. I cannot wait to watch Shamrock versus Severn 2.
I'm so excited, I'm going to slit my wrists in advance.
I'm so excited, I'm going to go out and splash out $200 for the 5-volume UFC training package. Did you see that video package?
I did not see that. That's something I missed also on my copy. I didn't have that either.
After the super fight, they cut to a promo for the UFC volume of training tapes, where you get to learn striking, submissions, takedowns, escapes, and conditioning from the likes of Dan Severn and Oleg Taktarov and Hoist Gracie and Ken Shamrock.
Wow, we need to get those tapes.
Especially, I want to see the striking one. I want Dan Severn to come out and teach me how to strike. They were $200 damn.
That is absurd, and we need to get those tapes.
Yes.
Any viewers out there who have them, please send them to us.
That's right.
I've never even seen those anywhere. I gotta find out who's got those. I mean, that sounds like it's a rare thing. I want to see how bad those are.
Yeah. And if you order it, the complete set, it comes with a hat and a T-shirt.
I want the hat.
Yeah, the hat. Just to show where we are in history too, it's a hat that's still like it's the black hat with the red ultimate, and then underneath in yellow fighting championship.
What Oh, that's the old hat, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like UFC 1 leftovers.
Exactly. This is what Goodridge almost bought when he called up Art Davie on the merchandise line.
He probably actually didn't buy it still. He's like, oh, this is your signing bonus. You get a UFC 1 hat.
That's right. So yeah, we got to find those tapes.
Anything else happen in between that I missed? Because
Yeah.
I guess my copy, I think your copy sounds like it's the actual pay-per-view feed. I think I have a later version of it.
Yeah, I think I have the actual pay-per-view feed, which amazingly showed there was a big fight in the stands.
Oh, really? So we
And
missed
they
this pre-fight.
showed it.
So I think, yeah, you must have the paper. You must have the Silvervision copy, the
Yeah.
British copy, which is the direct pay-per-view feed. I think I have the American version of it, then the original American VHS copy, which doesn't have that.
Yeah. And people were throwing chairs, and they only they only showed about 10 seconds of it, but they did show it for some reason. Like I don't know why you'd want to show that on your broadcast, but they decided to cut away from their graphics to show up the fight in the crowd.
That's pretty great. I mean, well, it's a free fight for the viewers at home, I guess. It's a free bonus
Yeah.
fight.
Why not? So yeah, they showed that. They did a promo for their videos, and then they started building up the tournament finale. That was the final fight of the evening.
Which Don Frye and Gary Goodridge, and now it's Gary Goodridge without a gi top.
Yeah, Gary Goodridge had a gi top, and they mentioned here, which I was surprised about, that Frye has a second-degree black belt in judo.
Which he rarely uses, but it's there.
Yeah, and apparently they're also talking about that he studied savate at some point, or savat.
Yeah, that's not as impressive as judo, though.
No, that's not impressive as judo. Having done some savat, I cannot imagine Don Frye doing it.
There's savat schools in America?
I used to go. I just recently quit going to a gym that taught it, yeah.
Wow, I didn't even know there were schools in America that taught savat.
Apparently, I know one. It's pretty the teaching's pretty basic, but it's there.
Wow, who knew? I never knew that.
Yeah. So now we get Goodridge, who they're advertising. Did you get Don Frye's great advertisement or not Don Frye, but Don Wilson's great advertisement of Gary Goodridge's background in wrist wrestling?
I did hear that. I also did get Bruce Beck actually apologizing for mocking Gary Goodridge's abilities earlier, saying, "Oh, I'll never talk bad about this guy again."
Yep. Beck climbs off his high horse, and Don Wilson rather makes a masturbation joke.
It wouldn't be the first, and it wouldn't be the last.
No. So yeah, and they're also, I noticed they are updating their intro graphic screen for the fighters from fight to fight. So suddenly now Goodridge is a devastating ground striker.
Yeah, I mean he is now. After we saw him actually do stuff, yeah, I did like that how they basically reread all of their cards. Now they have these new skills that they showed off in the cage about 20 minutes earlier.
Yeah, it was just like, okay, all of our scouting the first time was wrong, so here's what they're actually good at.
Which is fine by me, though. I mean, I actually didn't mind that. That was kind of cool. They did that. That they actually were updating and correcting themselves, and it made them sound, a little bit more realistic. It's a one-night tournament. Things are going to change.
Yeah.
Still kind of odd that they did that, but it's a welcome addition that they were willing to do that.
Definitely. So yeah, so we get the what was it? Was it Blatnick who then made the comparison to a movie fight? Was that so? I think the fight kicks off, and Blatnick immediately says that what was the action that he said was like a movie?
I'm trying to remember that. Also, I don't remember that one.
Yeah, because it ended up with the commentary afterward was, but Big John is no choreographer.
Oh, maybe this is a fight that won't be scripted or something like that. Probably something along the lines where UFC, it's as real as it gets.
Yeah, it was sort of like man, these guys are the skill they have. It's practically like what you'd see out of a kung fu movie, but Big John is no choreographer.
That sounds like some stupid thing that Bruce Beck would say. Yeah, that's probably close.
Yeah. And then, so yeah, Goodridge came out, and he really, for a guy who'd been in the cage as much as he had, because his fights were both, well, the first one wasn't long, but the second one was, and he was pretty exhausted after it.
Yeah, his cardio is not very good at all.
Yeah, he came out and he immediately started expending a lot of energy trying to take the fight to Don Frye.
Yeah, beginner's mistake for Goodridge here, just basically coming in. They tried trading hands for a little bit, but Goodridge managed to get Don's back, lifts him up, and not quite a suplex, but just kind of slams him back down.
Yeah.
Gary was just being very aggressive in the early goings of this fight.
Yeah, he obviously, as we said, he had Herrera planned perfectly, but he had no plan for Frye. He wanted to get out there and out-muscle him, and for as strong as he was, he didn't have, Frye had way more technique to stop most of his attempts to out-muscle him.
I did enjoy watching Gary just kind of toss him around like a rag doll, especially like that one he did where he got him from behind and threw him down, and then as Don is getting back up to his feet, Gary just kicks him right in the face.
Yeah.
That was a great one, and I think the best moment though was definitely when Gary was again trying to do a big slam, and Don Frye is just holding onto the cage, and he's being yanked out, like he's holding his arms up, and Gary's yanking him away and essentially snaps him back down. That was like a pro wrestling thing right there almost. That
was pretty awesome. Oh, that's what it was. It was the kick that Goodridge threw, that goofy kick he threw as Frye was getting up, and they said, and then Blatnick, I think it was, craps all over there. Oh, there's no place for that here. It's a high risk, low reward high risk, high reward technique, and it's really more something that belongs in a movie. And then Don Wilson was like, oh yeah, but in the movie we got choreographers, and Big John is no choreographer.
Oh, so, Don Wilson, you snob.
Yeah. But yeah, the Goodridge was definitely out there to try and muscle Frye around and snapped him off the cage. That was pretty fantastic.
Yeah, it was a really great, exciting match. It was a very short match also. Only went about, I think, under 3 minutes, whatever it was. But it was a very action-packed, under 3 minutes. I think it was like 2:40. Really action-packed fight until the finish, which was basically, I think Frye just reverses after one of Gary's slams and just gets on top of him and starts pounding away, I believe.
Goodridge was on his back, and Frye did actually a really nice drag over where he just drug Goodridge forward because Goodridge didn't know how to do any of the hooking or anything like that. So he just drug him forward, and then once Goodridge was on the ground, just started peppering him until he tapped. And it was a really nice fight, really fun, a lot of back and forth action. And it led to a post-fight interview, which really made Frye seem nice and sane and friendly.
Well, they both come off seeming nice and sane and friendly. Both of them were very humble. I do want to mention before we get into their post-fight things real quick, though, is that the towel was also thrown in to the fight. After Goodridge tapped out, the towel was thrown in. And Don Wilson actually says that this is the first time a towel has ever been thrown in the octagon.
That's not even close to true.
That's not even close to being true, no. But Don Wilson said it's true, so we have to believe what the Night Hunter says.
That's right. Can't argue with the Night Hunter. I don't want to get staked. So yeah, towel got thrown in. He tapped, and then Goodridge had a great couple of quotes after the fight. The first being, when he said that he who fights and runs away as to why he tapped out. Basically just saying, he was hitting me, and I just realized, I want to keep doing this longer, so why get hit now?
Oh, famous last words from Gary Goodridge. How ironic.
Yeah. And then he went back to his pre-fight quote. He said he had the superior heart, mind, and strength, but he forgot about stamina. Which
is very true, unfortunately, because Goodridge would always really be troubled by stamina issues through his whole career. Stamina issues and just absorbing way too much damage in his head. But we'll basically see that, I guess, over the course of the next 300 OS MMA reviews that we do.
Yeah, he, like I say, he kind of oversold himself in this event, and eventually, he really wanted to be a great kickboxer. That was his whole goal, was to really show off great kickboxing skill, and he did not have it at all.
No. That Cook Sulwan 4-3 black belt, not quite apparent in this. Maybe more so, I think the arm wrestling was probably his biggest ability here. Just the fact that he had that sheer strength and the will to keep pushing forward as well.
Yeah. So, all told, it was a lot of fun. I mean, you got some great action in almost every fight except for that Varelans HERRERA fight, and all the normal UFC weirdness that they pack into their promos and commentary and all that. And at the end, Goodridge and Frye both came off as like really nice, awesome people. They both seemed really great, and Frye seemed really cheerful and fun and energetic and not at all batshit insane.
No, this was really the perfect introduction for new fans. That's why I always say UFC 8 is like the first new generation of fighters, because we were basically starting over fresh, with the exception of a few guys who survived the early evolution of the sport. So it's really like the perfect spot to jump on for new fans, especially. And just because, really, out of 8 fights, only 1 was a dud. That's pretty good. Have only 1 fight suck out of 8.
Yeah, and it only lasted 10 minutes because they had time limits now.
Yeah, very good time. And also, I think the good thing, too, about this event was the pretty short time limits. I mean, which was unfortunate that they wouldn't keep a lot of these time limits as they went ahead. But things are going to change in a lot of varied ways over the next very quickly over the next few events. Like, things are going to, in terms of time limits especially, will be changing constantly, more than they have in the past. But the whole 10-minute time limit was a really good idea. 15 for the final, really good idea. Unfortunately, the next event will not quite be that way. But overall, I mean, it was a really good show. I think it's the best tournament we have seen so far.
Yeah, that may be true. I'm trying to think. I remember. I think that's probably pretty true.
We had a lot of finishes, a lot of really good fights overall, really exciting, dramatic matches overall with fighters that you wouldn't think would be exciting.
Yeah, and some really fun submissions and some really fun knockouts. So can't ask for better than that. And for those who do have my copy, managed to watch it. If you can, you get to get, or if you can find it, you get to see a really hilariously awkward interview with Christopher Penn, who immediately upon being interviewed insists on having Sean Penn known as his brother rather than being known as Sean Penn's brother.
Yeah, I didn't have that on my copy again. This is something else I was missing from my copy. So you apparently had post-fight bullshit, which is amazing. Why would they even bother filling up time with that at the end?
They had like 30 minutes. Not only did they do this interview with Christopher Penn, seeing what he thought of the fights post-fight, which was terribly awkward, but and was basically when it came down to, well, that was certainly something. That was pretty much his reaction.
How long was your version of the UFC 8 total?
2.5 hours.
Yeah, see, mine was only 2 hours, so I missed a lot in my copy.
Yeah, and then they went on the chat rooms and they fielded viewer questions live from their chat rooms.
Wow, that is, yeah, I wish I saw this. Like what brilliant questions were asked back in 1996 about the UFC?
I will admit, after that point, I pretty much just started skipping. I couldn't make myself watch it. The big one that they wanted to answer was, how do you apply to the UFC? That was the biggest question.
Wow, yeah, that makes sense. I'm sure there's a lot of people in those AOL chat rooms trying to get into the UFC at that point.
So I believe they offered like a hotline and a how to get into the UFC leaflet that you could order, send away for.
Man, I wonder if we can get that pamphlet too. There's so much good stuff we missed in that era of merchandise that I wonder if anybody even has.
Yeah, it would be fun to see if we could find some of that stuff.
I think we have ourselves a mission, and for any fans out there that haven't, let us know because we want it.
That's right.
We will review it on air.
I want to do a reading of the UFC's guidelines for becoming a fighter.
So a dramatic reading for that. We'll get Stephen Quadros in here to do that also.
That's right. Dramatic reading. Maybe do like a fireside viewing of the UFC training session. Oh, I could show what I learned out of the UFC training videos.
We need to get on this. Any viewers out there, if you have it or have any leads to where we can find this, let us know immediately. We will review it. We have no shame.
That's right. Absolutely none.
So yeah, that's pretty much UFC 8 in a very long nutshell. Overall, though, like really great show. It's a must-see event. You have to see it. Arguably, you cannot watch the old UFCs and not watch this one. It's one of the best ones out there.
Yeah.
Not even just because of Don Frye and Gary Goodridge, which are moments that everybody remembers, but it's because of also BOHLANDER's fights as well were really good. And the super fight, of course, like great super fight. These are just all very exciting matches, and surprisingly, a lot of the guys we saw tonight we will see again. We're not really saying too many goodbyes.
Stars.
I mean, we're seeing we're going to see more BOHLANDER, we're going to see more Ferrozo, we're going to see plenty more Frye and Goodridge. I think Varelans may be done at this point in the UFC.
I think he's got at least one more fight.
I can't remember. It's either one more or he might be done. We're getting close to the end of him, at least in the UFC.
I'll check really quick.
Joe Moreira is also going to be back as well, I believe. For better or for worse, I believe he comes back. I think he does. Not positive, but I think he does. Ken Shamrock, of course, will be back. Kimo.
Yeah.
We are going to say goodbye to Kimo for a while. He won't be back for a while, I don't believe, but he will be back.
Yeah, we get more from Kimo. We get one more from Varelans. And Moreira, we have one more from Moreira.
Which isn't much better, but we do get one more at least. One more chance to see this guy, this overhyped, underwhelming fighter, do his thing. And we do have to say goodbye to Ramirez. He won't be back, and we have to say goodbye.
No, Adkins does come back.
That's right, he does, and he sucks again. I remember.
Yeah. I know because when I was researching him, one of the big things that was claimed to fame in smaller promotions he fought for was 3-time UFC vet. So.
That's true. So we will see him one more time because he's counting, I guess, each fight as an appearance.
Yeah, each fight is an appearance.
Okay, I vaguely remember that now. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
But for the most part, a lot of these guys are sticking around, so that's a pretty good survival rate for this event, also, and that shows you just how much better these fighters were. They're actually going to continue on, and not just because they had no one else, but because they actually were pretty good.
Yeah. But yeah, so most everyone will see. Few guys we won't. As always, great event, man. I'm so looking forward to that super fight next time.
Yeah, I cannot wait till UFC 9, and I guess we should do a little quick preview of UFC 9 because this is actually going to be the very first most different event, for lack of better English, the most different event we have seen to date with the UFC.
Yeah, quite different.
Do we dare tease it? I don't know if we should tease now, but we will say that it is a big departure. I remember when I first got the tape for that event being very confused by it. But yeah, I mean, it's really weird considering what goes on in this event. But yeah, we've got a very new format to look forward to at UFC 9, as well as the greatest super fight in the history of UFC super fight history. Dan Severn, Ken Shamrock 2.
Yes. It doesn't get better than that.
Zayn has already given up on life, clearly. He's just like, I don't want to do that event. I don't want to watch it.
Man, I looked at it. I looked at my copy of it. It's 2 hours and 47 minutes.
Holy crap. You got to send me your version then, because I think I have the American copies. You have, I'm pretty sure, the British copies, which are just the pay-per-views, like, as they were shown. So you got to send me yours. I got to suffer through it with you.
All right. I'll definitely send you mine, and you can suffer through it with me.
So, final verdict, UFC 8, great event, great jumping on point for new fans and hardcore fans. Have to see it. If you haven't watched it yet, definitely worth picking up. There's a lot of events you could easily skip over. UFC 8 is not one to skip. It's one that you should have in your collection. It's one you should see. You have to see it.
Yeah.
So, final verdict, great event. Zane, do we have anything else?
I think that's it. I think, that's all I got. I got nothing.
Zane's got nothing. That means it's the end of the show. So we'll be back next time for another episode of Old School MMA Review. Once again, I am the Fight Nerd. That guy on the other side of the screen was Zane Simon. He's got nothing. I got nothing. We'll see you next time for the Ultimate Fighting Championship 9.
Buenos tardes.